Morning peeps, good morning everyone, how's everyone doing? Hopefully you guys are all doing well. Don't forget, if you're new to the channel, like, share, subscribe. Tomorrow being Wednesday, will be the 50th anniversary of Rumble in the Jungle. I think, without doubt, the biggest boxing event there's ever been. Like, without doubt. I was debating this with someone today, and I was like, surely it's Rumble in the Jungle. But then I thought about it, and I think my top three are all Muhammad Ali fights, which just goes to speak about his power. So Rumble in the Jungle in order: Rumble in the Jungle, Thriller in Manila, and Fight of the Century with Joe Frazier. So two of those include Joe Frazier as well. So what an era of heavyweight boxing. The fact that I think the biggest three fights are all from that era. It's insane. Let me round out my top five actually. So I would say, so Rumble in the Jungle, Thriller in Manila, Fight of the Century. I will then say Mike Tyson losing to Buster Douglas. It has to be there. And I think Marvin Hagler versus Tommy Hearns. I think those are the five. I think. So it doesn't mean biggest in terms of pay-per-view draw and biggest in terms of bums on seats. Just the most iconic. The ones that are remembered the most. I think those are the five. And I'd be shocked if anyone... Well, I wouldn't be shocked. But if anyone has another five, let me know. It kind of goes to my point, by the way, because three of those fights are outside America. So Rumble in the Jungle, Thriller in Manila, and obviously Mike Tyson, Buster Douglas. It goes back to my point about having a big event in Africa. All right, the number one boxing event of all time, I think, is in Africa. So it'd be nice to have something there. But we'll see. I know there is and will be, I think, some conversation about a Martin Bakoli one. Fingers crossed that can get over the line. We'll see. I was in Manchester over the weekend. I was there for Jack Catterall versus Regis Prograis. It was in a new venue, the Co-op Live. I said on the broadcast, this venue cost £365 to make. Obviously it didn't. 365 million. I had to correct myself. 23,500. Insane. Honestly, insane. There was, I'm going to say around 8,000 or 9,000, and it still felt very like big. Do you know what I mean? Like normally when you go to a venue that's that big and you get a third of the attendance, it kind of feels like, what's the point? But the way in which the venue is, it's still 8,000 or 9,000 worked in there. I can't imagine what that place will be like for a proper boxing event when there's 23,500 in there. But let's quickly go through the card. Campbell Hatton losing to Jimmy Flint. There's been a lot of conversation about this. Obviously, Campbell Hatton was moved to co-main event because of Michael Gomez Jr. pulling out of his fight against Reece Bellotti. But that's back-to-back defeats for Campbell Hatton now against the same opponent. Last time round, it was for the Central Area Super Lightweight title. No titles on the line this time round. And it was, I thought, very similar. Like, very, very similar. Campbell starting really fast, looked strong, looked the bigger punch of the two. And then the gas tank running a bit empty. And then sort of Flint nicking... Is nicking the right word? Winning those rounds towards the end. So I had it to Flint as well. I think Ricky said something along that Ricky Hatton said that he thought Campbell won it. You gotta, when it's close round, you're gonna give it to your son, obviously. But yeah, I thought Flint won that. So I guess it is a question of what next for Campbell. I mean, I've seen all the tweets about he's brave and, you know, credit to him. He loves a fight. I get all that, but what do we do next with him? You know, I think there's a good opportunity to remove him completely from TV shows and put him on some of these shows that we don't see. Steve Wood puts on loads of fight cards up in around that Manchester area. Put him on a few of those. Let him just learn his trade away from the eyeballs of boxing fans that watch boxing on TV. He is now sort of under sort of the tutelage of Ben Davison, more Barry, but under the tutelage of that camp. So he'll be getting good work, good sparring. He'll be learning from some really good fighters. Let's just almost forget about him for a year. Let him have 3 or 4 fights away from the cameras and then let's see. I don't think you can change much in 6 or 7 months. That's how long he's been with his new training setup. It's just, you're going to revert to type, especially when it's the exact same opponent. He's going to make you revert to type. So let's remove Campbell Hatton from the eyeballs and then let's see what happens. I mean, I have no expectation for him to go on and do anything crazy in the sport, but he wants to fight. Let's give him fights that make sense rather than rush him. There's no point now. We know where the level is, and then we'll see what happens. On that Reece Bellotti, Michael Gomez Jr. thing, when they got Reece on stage with me, it's funny because Reece is obviously saying effing and blinding, and they're in my ear saying, Addy, apologise for the language. I'm like, What's the point? This is boxing. This is past 9 p.m. I mean, why do you have to apologize? I've never understood it. Why do you have to apologize for someone swearing at a boxing event? Like, this is not daytime TV. It makes absolutely no sense. So, look, in the end, I kind of said, look, I know, Reese, you're really stressed and upset right now. So I kind of did apologize, but I was like, I ain't going to apologize every time this guy says fuck or pussy or whatever he said. Ain't going to happen. Ain't going to happen. And he has a right to be very, very upset, by the way. I mean, hopefully he gets paid out in full because he's done his 10-week fight camp. He is the champion. If I'm honest, like him fighting Michael Gomez, although I thought it was going to be a great fight, is a kind of a step backwards. Michael was the English champion. If you're Reese Bellotti, you're not a spring chicken. You want to go and really test yourself again. He's had a good sort of 2-3 years. So I can understand why he didn't even really want the fight. The fight was put on his table. He took the fight. You do a camp. And on the night, an hour before you're supposed to go in the ring, you get that news. No one's going to tell you to shut up and stop swearing, let alone me. So, look, he's not going to have they're not going to revisit that. I think everyone moves on, blah, blah, blah. All right, Jack Catterall reaches prograde. I do want to talk about Daniel Dubois. Stick with me, please. I thought that was one of the worst fights through 4 rounds. I was like, oh my God, this is just 2 counter-punching southpaws and this just isn't going to work. And then we had this weird knockdown and that seemed to spark everything. That almost seemed to spark Jack into life. Regis then kind of jumped on Jack. That, from round 5 to 12, it was a great fight. Like, if you can just remove rounds 1 to 4 from your head, rounds 5 to 12, great fight, very competitive. Obviously, Jack having the 2 knockdowns was the major difference, but I think a couple of the scorecards were really wide, like really, really wide. I was like, I thought Regis did some good work there. Regis was on the front foot. Regis was the one I felt sort of initiating the action. Yes, he got caught a couple of times coming in, but he's trying to do something, whereas Jack was on the back foot being the counter puncher. So I thought it was a really, really good fight. Jack clearly is a very, very good boxer, tricky to hit. His best asset, and I said this on the broadcast, is his patience. Like, his patience is, like, a lot of people, when they know a fighter's hurt, they jump on them, right? And I sometimes feel like that's when the opponent is at their most dangerous, when they feel like there's a chance they could get finished. And Regis was ready to swing until the end, but Jack was very patient with his work and ultimately knows what the bigger picture is. The bigger picture is a world title fight. So I thought he saw that fight out quite well. Regis did announce that he's going to retire, which was strange because he said, I'm going to retire. And then he says, I'm going to do bare knuckle. And I'm like, 1 second. So you're going to retire from boxing and then go into bare knuckle? That's not retiring. But then he's come out and said he's going to continue. And I think it's because, you know what it is? When you hear the scorecards, he's probably thinking, I've just been destroyed here. But when you go back and watch it, he's probably thinking, well, 1 second. Those scorecards aren't a reflection on what I did in the ring. So maybe he thinks, and he might not want this position, but maybe he thinks he can be a good gatekeeper because there are some young kids up and coming. There's a few in this country, Adam Azim, Dalton Smith, etc. So we'll see what happens. All right, let's quickly talk about Daniel Dubois. It's funny. I saw Daniel Dubois put up a post. I think he was going go-karting with his brother or something. And this guy was still wearing those leggings that he wore to the weigh, them tights and leather jacket. And I was like, he's just a character now. I just find him quite entertaining. I do. But let's talk what next for Daniel Dubois. Obviously, look, IBF heavyweight champion. So who's his mandatory? Quickly get this up. No idea. Frank Warren was on TalkSport on Saturday, and he's pretty much said that he wants Daniel Dubois to fight February 22nd, and I think the indication is it won't be Anthony Joshua anymore. No mandatory, by the way. There's no mandatory, which is interesting. But yeah, so he says it's probably not going to be AJ, and that makes sense. Like, I think it's a too quick a turnaround for someone that's just been stopped. Like, okay, if it was, I don't know. I mean, if it wasn't a case of AJ having been hurt the way he was hurt, okay, cool. You can, rest and roll into a fight camp and then go again. But he got hurt on several occasions here. We've got to be careful. So if it isn't going to be AJ February 22nd, there are a number of people it can be. The most obvious one, and I'm going to give 4 names here, but the most obvious one is Joseph Parker. Like, no one's going to say Joseph Parker doesn't deserve an opportunity. Again, Joseph Parker's coming off a fantastic 15 months. When everyone kind of wrote him off including myself a little bit after the Joe Joyce defeat. I mean, the Deontay Wilder and Zhilei Zhang wins are very, very solid. Very, very solid. I don't know how many people thought he was going to beat Wilder, right? We were trying to already sell the Wilder AJ thing, and he was like, not on my block. And then the Zhilei Zhang one, Zhilei Zhang, we know how good he is, and for him to get past Zhilei Zhang, and in the end, it was, I think, a very, very close fight, but, you know, he survived a couple of knockdowns, I think it was, and he got past Zhilei Zhang, who himself is a top 6, top 7 heavyweight. So that kind of back-to-back wins, you should get something. He's not going to get Fury, he's not going to get Usyk. Let's give him the next best thing. So that's the number one choice, right? Number one choice is Daniel Dubois versus Joseph Parker. Give me, though, Daniel Dubois versus Martin McCollum right now. Give me that right now. I want that fight right now. I think that fight there, I've heard about these guys' sparring wars, and they're not holding back in sparring. They are fucking going full throttle. I want to see that fight. I am a huge fan of Martin McCollum. Honestly, huge fan. It's funny, we were just talking about George Foreman at the start, and he is that, isn't he? He is that. He's that. Honestly, he's just power in both hands. I think he's now found himself and what he is as a fighter, and he is destructive. And so is Dubois. Honestly, that's a shootout. I love that fight. So yeah, those are my number 1 and 2 options. I'm going to chuck in a wild card. Like I could say Zhilei Zhang and Agit Kabayel, and we can go down the list. A wild card one, just for the fun of it. Why not? This is boxing. We can do what we want. Fabio Wardley. Who would not want to see that? Who would not want to see that? Fabio's punching power, which we all know now is clearly there, right? Even at a very high level. Fabio's punching power puts him as a problem for most heavyweights. Most heavyweights. And because there is no amateur background, he's quite difficult to read. Like most amateurs, especially those that have stayed in the system a long time, there is certainly a style in the way in which they fight. It's very beautiful to watch, but it might be quite predictable. Because he doesn't have that, he's kind of hard to predict. And he fights fire with fire. There is no, when he gets hit, he goes on a retreat. You hit him, he wants to hit you hard back. That's Fabio Wardley. So I would not mind seeing that. And let's not forget, both are now with Frank Warren. Frank can make that fight. Again, there is no mandatory. So it's literally whoever he wants to fight come February 22nd. So Frank might think, let's keep this in-house. Let me take all of it and keep this in-house. And I wouldn't mind it. Honestly, I wouldn't mind. But look, first choice, Joseph Parker. Second choice, Martin McCollum. Wild card choice, Fabio Wardley. Fuck it. I love it. And I wouldn't mind seeing it happen. And Fabio's ready to go. This is another thing as well. Look, they're all ready to go, but Fabio's ready to go, like ready to go. Fabio only did a couple of minutes in the ring. He's ready to go. There are no injuries. He's good. And one thing I said to him after the fight, I said, what do you want next? And he said, look, I've got all these belts. He basically says he wants a world title shot next. That's what he said. And in my head, I was like, calm down. You ain't getting that. But now I'm like, okay, 1 second. He ain't that far off. All right. Let's have a look and see if there is anything. Oh, here we go. I said this. Ahara Davis resisting offers. Okay, no, I thought it was something else. I thought I read that. Revisiting offers. Ahara Davis resisting offers to fight but wants to stay in boxing. Yeah, makes sense. It makes sense, doesn't it? It does. It makes sense. Let's not do this. IBF purse bids ordered for Martin McCollum, Agit Kabayel for November the 5th. Okay, so the winner of that is in line to have a crack at Daniel Dubois, but Daniel Dubois will be able to have one more before that. So we'll see how that one plays out. Talks restart about Canelo, Chris Eubank Jr. That needs a video. We can't just skip. I can't give you 2 minutes on that. That needs a video. What is that about? That needs a video. Strange. It's just strange, isn't it? It's strange, but I mean, there are other guys at 168 that are far more deserving than Chris Eubank Jr. to get in the ring with Canelo. But, I mean, Chris brings a bit of stardust to it, doesn't he? I mean, Mbili's like saying, 1 second, what about me? What, have I not done enough? What about me? So we'll see how that one plays out. Final one, Janae Boston and Ishmael Davis begin building towards domestic dust-up. Yeah, I mean, you say that, but they had an opportunity when they were ringside to kind of stir it a bit more, and it was very friendly, which, look, it is what it is, right? You can't fake it. We don't want people to fake beef, but I felt there was an opportunity there to really say, okay, I want that fight next. Like, let's do this. And it wasn't forthcoming. And I think it's more because of Ishmael, because Ishmael put in a really good performance against Josh Kelly. Ishmael's now probably thinking way bigger. No disrespect than Janae Boston. He's probably thinking, I'm ready to go. Like, I wasn't quite sure where I was. And then I've gone in there against, especially on short notice, against a good fighter in Josh. And I mean, that fight goes on another minute. It's one of the wins of the year. So he's probably thinking, I don't want to kind of go backwards a little bit. So there might be a bit of that in there. All right, guys, girls, peace and love.